if you know where to start and you know what you want, but you don't know who you want to be, then you are not going to execute your mission effectively. Because there are times in this journey where it's going to test who it is that you are. It's going to ask, hey, is this really who you are? You agree or disagree?
I agree.
You need a benchmark to go back to and say, okay, this is who I said I am, and even though I don't feel like doing X, Y, or Z, this is who I'm committed to be.
Some of the things I think that stop people is because they try to do too many things at once, or they have too many options or decisions that they put in front of themselves, and then they overwhelm themselves, and they need one priority, two, what can you affect? What do you have control over? You need at least one thing. Rita set me up and said, I need one thing that you're guaranteed you can be successful at.
Welcome back to another episode of Man vs. Marriage. It is I, your humble servant, the Q Dog, in the Moran family studio with my lovely wife, Jeanne Moran. Jeanne, what is going on this evening, baby?
Oh, lots of stuff.
There is lots of stuff happening, and that's a good thing. So tonight, as we get started, we're here to talk to you about where do you get started? And that's what this episode series is about. Where do I start? Now, at this point, you ought to have gotten into episode 1. You ought to have gotten into episode 2. And this is the trilogy factor. This is the trilogy piece. This is part number 3 to that particular, to this particular series. And it's crucial. But here's the thing, honey. Each step in this process is crucial. It's not so crucial that it's make or break and everything falls apart. But what we're here to talk to you about tonight is very important, because if you, the listener, if you know where to start and you know what you want, but you don't know who you want to be, then you are not going to execute your mission effectively. Because there are times in this journey where it's going to test who it is that you are. It's going to ask, hey, is this really who you are? You agree or disagree?
I agree.
Yeah. So you're going to have to know that, because when decisions need to be made or when challenges arise, you need a benchmark to go back to and say, okay, this is who I said I am, and even though I don't feel like doing X, Y, or Z, this is who I'm committed to be. And so the standard at Man vs. Marriage, family famous, QuincyMoran.com, the standard is simply this: excellence, not perfection. Our belief is there was one who was perfect, and he got murdered for it. And look, it's what had to happen in order for us to have faith. So it's understandable. But excellence is something that is actually attainable. It's attainable because it's a standard by which that you can go out and you can execute at a high level, but you're not let down because everything is not perfect, because everything's not going to be perfect. And you can use perfect as an excuse on why you shouldn't continue and why you should remain where you are. Now, honey, as we get started here with who do you want to be? Do you have any thoughts going into this discussion about this topic, or are you ready for me to get into it?
Nope, I'm ready for you to get into it.
Okay. One of the most powerful, and I hope you write this down in this journal we've encouraged you to have. One of the things that was most powerful for me in my entire life was coming to this understanding and then starting to tell myself this phrase. Here it is. Who you are is not who you have to be. That rocked my world. And I didn't know that was going to be the phrase that pays per se in order for me to change my life. But as I've gone along in this situation, it has become apparent to me that who I was is not who I wanted to be. And the beauty is that I could be someone different. And the other part of that is I get to decide who it is I want to be. I get to reframe this. I get to step into who it is that I believe is going to accomplish the things that I have set for my life. And so there's nuances to I get to decide because I'm a man of faith, and that faith is in Jesus Christ, and I endeavor to be who he created me to be. And so the desires of who I want to be, I believe, come from that particular framework. I also believe that that is the only true transformation that you are going to find is in Jesus Christ, according to your faith. Because you can put a bunch of disciplines together and you can change for a while, but true transformation comes through Jesus Christ. All right, I'll step down off the soapbox. Not guaranteeing I'm not going to hop back up there. But in order to decide who it is you want to be, you must be willing to deconstruct who you are now and come face to face with it. Why is that? Honey, off the cuff. Why must you decide why must you face who you are? Why must you deconstruct to understand who you are? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, you got to know where you're starting from. You don't know what you're changing until you really kind of look at who you are and what you do and why you do it. And then from there, you can figure out, is it really what I want? And if it's not, what's required for me to change it?
Yeah, I agree with you. We're on the same page and we're in the same book.
Yay.
Which is always a plus. The thing is that you have to, and I don't always say that, but you have to understand why you do what you do. It is incredibly important. Why is that? Because many of us, maybe everyone, collectively at some point or another, many of us are living our lives trapped in the past, anchored somewhere. I myself was anchored somewhere. I did not realize it. It took many years of diving into who am I and why do I do what I do, and then for Jeannie and I to really work through being sandpaper in the beginning of this thing, because we were rubbing each other very coarsely and in the wrong way. And it was very difficult. But over the course of time, we started to smooth out those edges. We started to smooth out the rough places. And it helped us in fitting this vision together. And so it's important now, but also to know as you move along in the future that you're going to discover places where you're stuck. You can't discover it all at one time. If you do, I don't know anybody that's discovered it all at one time, but that's part of living this beautiful life. And that is being willing to change and grow and evolve based on the things that you learn about yourself. And so have you ever been around somebody that maybe you're talking about changing, or you're talking about going on a diet, or you're talking about going to the gym? Maybe you are the person you're around when this happens and you get a case of the buts. Yeah, but. Well, I want to do, yeah, but. I'm not.
Glitch.
The glitch. That's what it was for Jeannie, was the glitch. I came up with the phrase the yabbits after talking to people for a long time and them giving me reasons why they couldn't do X, Y, or Z. And so I had to go head first at that. Early in Jeannie and Maya's marriage, I would talk about things and she would always say the glitch, and I came to hate the phrase the glitch is. But you'll hear these common phrases. You might even hear them from yourself, which is I'm not ... I can't ... Well, I've never ... My brain doesn't work that way ... Is it familiar? Is that familiar language you hear around people? Is that familiar language you use around people? Autism is alive. Kiki is...
And very excited.
She is getting after it, dude. It's exercise time in Kirsten's room. All right. So, honey, are there any examples that you might have? Any examples you could use on about yourself? You just told the glitch, but go ahead and just talk about people who are stuck, and then I'm gonna bring this a little closer to the landing zone.
Okay. So I'm one of those people that used to say my brain doesn't work that way. I don't think that way. Now I've come to understand the reason that my brain doesn't think that way is because of my anxiety or because of overwhelm. I'm learning, especially now with our children being autistic, I've done a lot of researching into it and learning how to teach them and what's required. We have other children who have different ways of learning. And learning those things, I started learning a lot about myself. I'm an auditory processor. I process things by talking and hearing it out loud. So for me to process through something, when I want to do something, I have to sit down with Quincy. And this is not a have to because I have to. It's a have to because I need someone I trust to bounce off of. I have somebody in the book world. I do the same thing. When it comes to business planning and story plotting, I have somebody that I call and say, okay, I have 101 ideas. I need to get them out. We bring it back. When I want to change something or I want to do something and I feel stuck, majority of the time for myself, it is because one, I've hit a speed bump where I had a plan, I'm on track, and life or other people or other things come in and it's not on my list of crap to do. It's not in my schedule for today and it throws me. Those moments are difficult for me because it's an overwhelm of, okay, wait, I have to stop what I'm doing, reset, get into another mindset, and then move forward. Some people get stuck there. I know a friend of mine who has anxiety and ADHD, and she got stuck on something so simple as I wanted to make something in the kitchen and I needed to choose a pot. She got stuck because she could not choose which pot to use because do I want to make this much? Okay, but do I want to save some? Do I need enough for just tonight? Like she went in a circle.
Wow.
Over something very simple and had to have her husband come in and she just said, just pick a pot. Whatever pot you pick, I'll do the recipe from that. There are people who can overwhelm themselves by something very, very small and not realize it. For myself, it's a sensory overload. If we talked about this in one of the other episodes where if we have a list of things to do, I need to write down the list and then I need to physically put it on a calendar to say, these are the days that we're doing these things so that list now has a place to go and it has a determined time and place to happen. Otherwise, for myself, it's just a list and it grows and it grows and it grows and it becomes very overwhelming. Those things can stick me because I will look at it and say, I'm overwhelmed and I'm done. I'm not even going to try. It's too much. It's too hard. It's too difficult. When we started looking at who do I want to be? I want to be healthier. I want to work out. I want to eat better. I want to feel better. I want to take supplements. I want to fix this part of my life. At the time, that means I have to get up earlier. I already don't sleep. I need to meal prep. Okay, where am I going to put that time? And what am I going to do about the grocery list? What am I going to do about all of these things for myself? Became overwhelming because there was too many things to think about and too many things to do. I got over that by involving PJ.
Mm-hmm.
Said, this is what I want to do. Again, verbal processing, auditory processing. This is what I want to do. What does that look like? How do I do this? And I had her tell me, this is your meal plan. These are the things that you can eat. These are the things that you can cook. I got to choose what I wanted. And then you and I got together and said, okay, what can we put on the grocery list? What will all of us eat that we can make this work? So sometimes the reason you get stuck is because you overwhelm yourself with too many choices, too many decisions to make. Maybe you're looking at the overall picture, and like me, maybe you just need a small chunk. Quincy can look at 5 things and change. Boom. Just, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And he can just gear that way. I can't. I take the 5 things and I look at them and say, okay, what is going to be the, first of all, what's my easiest guaranteed success? What can I do that I know for certain I can do without help? And I pull that first. And then I pull a second one and say, okay, in order to do this, what help do I need? For me, talking to Quincy, if I need accountability on something, I'll call PJ and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I need you to hold me accountable. How do we do that? And she'll give me, text me pictures, whatever. If it's my writing, I have somebody that I can bounce ideas off of and get it out of my head and put it somewhere else. It just depends on how you do things. How do you look at it? Do you look at it at an overall picture and it's very overwhelming and it's very like future thinking? Quincy's a person, he plans 5 years down the road. Easily. I don't plan 5 years down the road because there's too many unresolved variables that I just don't know what's coming, and I will get frustrated because if anything comes in and derails me, I used to stop. Now, I'll use the example of Monday. I had a rough day Monday, a really rough day, and too many things going on in my head, and I needed to get them out, and I didn't have that availability right away, and I exploded on multiple people because I was frustrated and I was anxious and I was overwhelmed, and I had to get somebody on the phone and say, this is what I need. This is what I need to do. We got everything out in the open. We got everything out in the air. We made decisions on this needs to be handled now. This can be handled later. I just needed to be able to sort through the thoughts. And then I came to Quincy and said, okay, this is what we're doing. Normally, if you had asked me, what, 2 years, 3 years ago, maybe? What do you think, roughly?
I mean, it really depends on the topic, but
Something like that could shut me down. Like I would just stop and not do anything for like 3 days until I finally processed through by myself and said, okay, this is the thing I'm going to do. And then I would get up and do it. Something like that could actually shut me down for several days. This time, I was actually kind of proud of myself. I had my aha moment and said, hey, I got through it in 24 hours. That's pretty freaking awesome. But that's some of the things I think that stop people is because they try to do too many things at once, or they have too many options or decisions that they put in front of themselves, and then they overwhelm themselves and they need 1, priority, 2, what can you affect? What do you have control over? You need at least one thing. Rita set me up and said, I need one thing that you're guaranteed you can be successful at. Not because it's easy, but because it's something that you want to do. Like it's just something that when you think about it, you're excited. You want to do it. And you need one thing that is hard. That you're going to need a little bit of help. Maybe it takes a little bit of extra work. Don't do more than that. Until you master those 2, don't do more than that. But have somebody or a plan in place. I have Quincy. I have somebody I talk to outside of Quincy. You got to have kind of balance there.
So, I mean, you do have to know what your own personal limitations are, and you also need to look at your track record. And so what you're talking about is the reason that you had the glitch, the reason that you said your brain doesn't work that way. You're saying is primarily because when it came time to make a decision on what to do, you got overwhelmed and you shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, that's something that may be helpful. Maybe you, the listener right now, maybe that's the way that you're wired and that has been holding you back. So that's one aspect that
It's
it could
actually
be.
very common in women.
Okay. Well, I've never been a woman, but I'm going to trust your judgment because you've been one your whole life.
I have.
And so that too, just to take 1 second there, that's what used to challenge. That used to be a challenge between you and I because I was changing so many things so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I would try to force my way on you, and that did not work.
No.
I would try to send you videos or podcasts or books or things that were lighting up my life, and it just was not where you were. And so you do have to be able to, it's important for you to get to know more about your spouse, to get to know more about yourself.
Well, and to take into consideration too, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if your wife is also a mom, those things come into factor when we're trying to do something for ourselves. We have to look at, I used to look at, okay, but I have practice here. I have this lesson here. I have this thing here. I've got this kid that needs hands on from this time to this time. Where am I going to put my time to do what I need to do? And how much time does that look like? And that becomes very overwhelming because now you're looking at the guilt of, well, but if I don't do these things, then I'm a bad mom. And if I don't do these things, then I'm on myself about being a bad wife. So I guess what the reason I'm saying that is I'm cautioning you, if your wife is trying to change something or you're wanting to help her change something and she just like gets pissy and overwhelmed and I used to do it to Quincy all the time. I would snap instantly because it was too much for me to process through until we sat down and went through a schedule and said, okay, well, what if we do this? And what if we do this? You need to know that because when you're trying to bring your spouse on board and say, well, I'm going to do this and I want you to do it with me, and you get that buck, it may not be that she doesn't want to do it. It might just be, I need to figure out where that fits and what that looks like so that I can make the adjustment. You can look at something and say, I'm going to go to the gym an hour a day and I'm going to put it here on my schedule. And you can move it to anywhere you want in your schedule based on your travel or your work. For me, if I was going to work out, I had to have a set time because I have to have childcare. I have to make sure that I can get to and from. I've got to make sure that, things are handled that are normally handled by me so that I can have the time to do this thing for myself. So I say that to caution you. She might not be snapping at you because you're asking her to do something. It might just be that there's all these other things first that she's got to work through and figure out where to put it.
Okay. Well, and I think that's great information. It's quite a long rabbit trail, but it's great information for us. So you could be stuck in the past. You could be stuck in your current situation and be overwhelmed, and changing who you are is too overwhelming. You could also be a blamer, and you could be blaming your spouse or your parents or your siblings or your friends or your enemies, just blaming other people for why you can't change and blaming them for your choices and your behavior. And then those are three of the areas that you can look at in coming to terms with why things have not changed in your life. And some of those are things that are subconscious, like you just don't know that it's holding you back. I was stuck in the past in many areas, namely, just to be as brief as possible, my parents got divorced at 5 years old, and somehow I internalized that to say that I wasn't worth them staying married. And that birthed a lie in me to say I wasn't good enough. And that I wasn't good enough meant I need to prove to you that I matter. And in order for me to prove to you that I matter, I have to be a people pleaser. And so those things that have you stuck in the past, they can remain hidden for quite some time unless you are willing to deconstruct who it is that you are and face yourself. Be vulnerable with your faults, your failures, and your successes, and say, okay, this is who I am. And then you repeat this to yourself. Who I am is not who I have to be. I suggest that you seek God's heart for who he has created you to be, because that's where you will be the most fulfilled, and that's where you will provide the most impact for the people around you. And it is important to serve the people around you. Now, if you find yourself in a place where you don't follow through, you cave in easily. Look, I had a low moment today, and I had a low moment yesterday. Keto, trail mix, fail. Absolute fail. Exposing myself here around the world. It does happen to us all. It does. It just happens. But it's what you do after you get punched on the canvas. And I just laid on the canvas at that point because I caved in. But with that said, I want to talk to you now that you know who you are is not who you have to be. Now that you know that it's very important for you to be willing. Willingness is a big, big factor here. For you to be willing to deconstruct who you are and look at the good, bad, and the ugly. Now that you know that there are some key elements or factors or environmental factors going on that may not allow you to change or have not allowed you to change in the past because you weren't willing to take responsibility for them. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe you're a blamer, etc. Now you know. Now you know what to look for, what to listen for when you start to decide who it is that you want to be. But how do you decide that? You have my number one. Pray and seek God's heart. Lord, who am I? What would you have me do? That is a real deal. It's for real. I know I'm a walking example of that. Now, if you need help there in your prayers, Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. If you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. Let's get to it. Now, here are some exercises, and I give all credit, here on this earth, I'll give credit to Jay Ferrugia, which is a guy, he has a thing called Renegade Radio. This is way back in the day. When I was at the gym, I found out about this guy, and he was having a conversation with someone about an experience that he had. It's called the funeral experience. And here's the thing, is that the funeral experience catapulted me into what was possible. Because when you decide, or you're deciding who it is you want to be, you need to have some framework. You need to, and for me, it was like, okay, what is this about? So here's the exercise that you go through. And the thing is that as you work your way through this exercise, I want you to go with this frame of mind. Men, think about a man that you admire and why. Think about the attributes of a man or men that you admire and what it is that you admire about them, the words you would use to describe them, and start to put that in your memory bank as a framework. Now, if the men in your life that you admire are womanizers, pimps, guys that do things that are not above board, I recommend you get some new role models. However, if it's the men in your life, maybe your dad was not around when you grew up, so it's very difficult for you to find someone as a male role model. Let's work together. Let's talk. Let's do an exercise together offline, Quincy at MVSMpodcast.com. Now, look, the funeral experience is this. Think about the people that matter the most to you in your life, and I'm going to ask you to think about them right now. I'll talk about some of the people that matter the most to me in my life. One is on this podcast with me, probably the number one. No, the number one, Jeanne Moran, my wife. Number 2, Hunter Moran. Number 3, Kirsten Moran. Number 4, Hannah Moran. Number 5, Gracie Moran. Number 6, Ashlyn Moran. Number 7, Sophia Moran. Number 8, Jocelyn Moran. And number 9, Anissa Moran. Those are the ones that matter to me the most on this planet. Now, there's another round of people that matter to me deeply. That would be Pete, Debbie, Rondell. That would be Monica, Vito. That would be Bob, Jamie. That would be Josh, Christy, Sally. And the list goes on from there. But as far as my close connected circle, there would be a Shane, there'd be a Michelle, etc. So you start to think about those people. And then you fast forward to your death. Okay? And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pretend that you have the typical funeral, because that's going to work for the exercise. And you are basically a fly on the wall as people come up and they talk about who you were in their life. What impact did you make in their life? Memories that remind them of the good times and how things went. And you start to think, what is it I would want my wife to say about me when I'm not around? What was the lasting legacy that I left behind to my wife, to my children, to my family, to my friends? And that small handful of people, you imagine them coming to the microphone and saying, when I think of Quincy, this is what I think about. And you take note of those. And I'm going to ask you to write them down. And so when I started thinking about it, one of the things that was very important to me is that I wanted, when my wife thought about me now, when I'm not around, I wanted there to be an opportunity for it to bring a smile to her face. Like I wanted to create such a love between us that she felt it in her heart when I was not around, in a good way. Some of the things I wanted them to say is that, Quincy was a man of integrity. Quincy was an honorable man. Quincy was somebody that had a heart to help you and would help you authentically. He was respectable. He was a mentor. He was a man of integrity. He was a leader. He was a protector. He inspired joy in my life. He seemed to have an interesting confidence about him. He had grit. He was passionate. He had determination. Quincy was a man of his word. Those are the things that I wanted my wife and my kids to say about me. And then once you determine what those things are, you come back to the present day. And you ask yourself some hard questions. You say, okay, if I want to be trustworthy, let's say that's one of the words. Like I want the people that talk about me to say he was a very trustworthy man. You have to look at it and you go, well, number one, am I somebody that I trust? Am I somebody that I would trust to come through in the hard times, or am I a guy who's going to cave in? Am I going to let me down? And if the answer to that is yes, well, then you can't expect people to trust you if you don't present trustworthy behavior. Are you a leader in your home? What does that even look like? I've heard it said this, and I've said it myself. If you have to walk around and tell everybody you're the boss and you're the leader, you are not the boss and you are not the leader. That is just where it's at. My wife has shaken her head, yes, because we've seen it.
Multiple times.
We've seen that perverted in such a way where people will throw scripture at you or throw words at you or demean you because they say you are the boss and you have to, I'm the boss and you have to respect me.
I'm the head of the house.
And that works never. And if it's working, it's miserable.
For somebody.
Yeah, it is miserable because the guy who walks around doing that knows that he's not.
You don't have to prove it. If you're really the person that you have to tell everybody you are, you wouldn't have to tell them. They would know, because it's how you carry yourself. It's how you act. It's who you are. You don't have to tell everybody I'm their dad, so you have to listen to me. They know that you're their dad. But do you act like their father and teach them and train them and guide them? Or do you act like the dictator that says, you're going to do it because I said you're going to do it, and you don't get an opinion? You don't even get to discuss with me. It's just, this is the way it is. Now, when they're small, there's a place for that, because there are things that they have to learn when they're tiny that, you don't touch the stove. It's hot. They touch the stove. I told you not to touch the stove. This is why. But when they're older, we don't have to reiterate what our roles are. They know who we are.
I don't agree with that.
I do.
Well, of course you agree with it. You said it. I would modify, or I guess I would slightly challenge what you're saying, because as your kids get older and they turn into young adults, there are times where you do have to have conversations to teach them about authority.
There is, but you don't have to reiterate to them who you are in their life. Your statement is always, what are our standards? What are our values? Not, I'm your dad and you're going to do X, Y, Z. It is always brought as a question of, what are our values? What are our standards? And when the answer back is, well, this is what our rules are and this is what we're supposed to do, then what's your answer? It's not because I'm forcing you to do it. These are the rules of the house.
You know what? I think you make a good point, and I'm going to give that one to you.
It's not because of who you are. It's because of the standard that we've set.
Well, it is because of who I am and the standard we set, and I don't have to bang the drum about it because we've established that. But if I didn't believe that about myself, why would I ask you to believe that about me?
True.
If I didn't believe that about myself, why would I ask my children to believe that about me?
Well, and your track record with your children is, they have seen over the 18 years that they can trust you. They have seen over the 18 years that you're not in it to just make them do something. You're helping them do what's best for themselves. It's the track record. It's not browbeating them with, I'm your dad. It is who you are as their dad, the example that you set as their dad.
That's a good word. And the reason I became that was because of what I'm telling you right now. Now, look, when they're teenagers, there are times you're going to have to say, if you're anything like me, you're going to have to say, they're going to say, why? And I'm going to say, because I said to freaking do it. And that's that. And I don't like using that, but sometimes that is a part of it. And that happens in the real world outside of this home, and you need to learn how to navigate it. But they say there's no such thing as a dumb question. I disagree. I've raised teenagers, and there are plenty of them. And let me say this: I'm guilty of asking dumb questions, but I still welcome all the questions. With that being said, that is what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you to have this funeral experience. It's a great fundamental exercise. For me, looking back, there are men in my life that I admire. There are women in my life that I admire. And so I kind of used some of their attributes as the framework. And one of the people I look up to the most in this world is my grandpa. And that's my mom's dad. He left us in 2020, but he was a great representation of a man to me. Flawed, like all of us, but a great representation. And for as much as people demonize the patriarchy, he was a wonderful patriarch of our family.
He was an approachable patriarch.
And then, he was married to a very feisty matriarch of our family. And she was tough and gritty and had tenacity, but she had a great heart. My papa, which was my dad's dad, I looked at him and his commitment to his faith. And I only really ever knew these guys later in their life. So who they were when I met them is not who they began. And then another person that I look up to is my dad. There is no, aside from my own transformation, heart transformation, in Jesus Christ. There's no one on earth that I can look at because I knew him before and I know him after. And there is no one I admire more than him relative to that and changing, because he was a mean, broken man before Jesus, and he is not that man anymore. It is incredible. Like I can't articulate the change in this guy. When I was 10, I moved back out to Alabama. And I don't say this to talk bad about my dad. This is a real, true to life reality experience. And if you meet my dad today, it would baffle you that this was him. But this was him. I was 10 years old. I'm an affectionate guy. You know, I'm fun loving. I'm affectionate. And so I went over and I put my arm around my dad's neck at the dinner table. And he looked at me with a look that is hard to describe. And he said to me, "I'm not one of your stupid friends at school. Get your hands off of me." And I was like, okay. Like out in California with my mom and, you know, my family, my grandparents, that was a normal occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that guy was going through, but it was not the right moment. I can tell you that. Now, since I believe it was in 1990, that guy, completely different. Jeannie knows my dad. I mean, she didn't know him before, obviously, but incredible fortitude and commitment. And I believe he has the highest level of integrity, which he did not before. And then I look at people like Nick Saban. You know, he's a great coach. I loved coaching football. He loves to teach, train, and mentor and coach people. So I looked at some of the attributes, and I'm telling the truth. I looked at some of the attributes that he had. I read one of his books and listened to what he said, many, like hours and hours of what he would talk about in the media at some of his events and how he would talk about being a winner. And being a winner doesn't always involve the scoreboard. It's about a process. It's about becoming. It's about accountability. And then obviously, you know, the top of someone I look at and wanted to, I wanted to frame my life around the attributes of was Jesus. He was the ultimate leader, a servant leader. And so I took those things very seriously. And it was through that experience where I started the process of developing who I truly wanted to become. And when I did that and I came back to present day and asked myself this question, is who I am right now and what I'm doing now, if I continue what I'm doing, is it going to get me to that particular destination someday? And the answer was no. I was not going to get there. So either the destination changes or Quincy changes. So what do you want? And that's what you, the listener, has to decide what it is that you want. Who do you want to be? And so I had to begin the process by deciding what it was. And to Jeannie's credit, I had to pick out the loudest thing first. And I do take on a lot, too much sometimes, and try to go on too many different scales. But like one of those brilliant sayings from the movie The Patriot, aim small, miss small. So what you want to do is you want to begin the process of building internal credibility with yourself. Become a man that you yourself can count on, that you will come through, that your intentions and your motivations are pure. And then once you begin to be somebody with confidence that you can count on, other people will naturally start counting on you as well, because your words and your deeds, your words, your deeds, and your actions, they will all begin to align with one another. And that is what is incredibly important. It's that work of transformation that's going to get you to that ultimate destination with who do you want to be. Now, I'm here to tell you that who I decided, in those early years, that has evolved over the years because I have wanted to challenge myself to grow.
Mm.
And so that happens. So what part of who you are, what part of who you are that you don't share with other people is holding you back? You've got to be honest with yourself. It's that important. So ask yourself this question: what needs to be true in order for who I want to be, for those attributes to be my destination? What needs to be true about me now? And then you don't go out and tell everybody what you're changing. You don't go out. Now, if you have an intimate group of people that you trust, then you do. And if you're going to be working on things, like I talked to Jeannie, now we'll talk about things that we're working on. So there's a level of accountability there. Mm-hmm. Chances are, because you've got on this podcast and it's like, where do I start? You may not have that rapport with your wife right now. It happens. Jeannie and I were there as well. So I want to ask you to do this exercise. I want to ask you to write it down. And I might ask you, if you want bonus points, you could. It's risky, so probably not. But you could go say, hey, wife or friend or the people closest to you, what words would you use to describe me? Please be honest. It's not likely they're going to be very honest, but I want you to begin to map this out because this is a key factor in all three of these things coming together that we are teaching you. So, taking responsibility for where you are, that is the place to start. Keeping your focus on the things that you can affect. And what are those? If you've listened to the previous episodes, it's your attitude, your actions, and your effort. That is where it is. You can control those things. Now, once you get through that exercise and you get through that and you're moving on to the next one, you got to figure out, what do you want? That may evolve as well as time goes along. Once you figure out what you want, now you're figuring out, who do I want to be? Because life is going to test your mettle. And you need to know who you are committed to being. And like Jeannie said earlier, in this process or in this podcast, whenever questions arise, what do our house rules say? What do our values say? Because that will guide you in making your decision. Very, very difficult business situation Jeannie and I are going through. Very difficult. Hard decisions that need to be made. I may suffer greatly. We may suffer as a family greatly. I pray that's not the case. Someone said, man, it sounds like a hard decision to make. I said, actually, it's not a hard decision to make if I go based on what my values are. If I go based on my character, it's not a hard decision to make. The consequences could be very painful, but the decision is not, because I know where I line up. Mm-hmm. And you will too. And you will have to establish your own sense of values, and you will need to live them in order to get to the destination. Now, look, since it moves, it'll be a destination you visit, which really, I think Brendon Burchard really puts it out well, is that these goals are actually not destinations, they're mile marker on the journey. I was like, man, that blew me away. So now you have your homework. Great is your reward because you've heard about this funeral experience. So I'm asking you in closing to take this extremely seriously. Take it very seriously and put some time and energy and effort. Don't just leave the podcast and not do anything about it. I'm asking you to take this seriously because I'm telling you from firsthand account that this dramatically shifted the course of my life. It changed who I am. And you know what? There's a woman that's on this podcast with me that's been the beneficiary of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else? There are children in our household that have been the beneficiary of me stepping up to become who it is I was meant to be. I have in-laws and siblings and parents that this affects in a positive way as well. But it doesn't happen unless you do it on purpose. And your standard must be excellence. Stop using perfection as an excuse. How do I know that happens? Because I did it. Everything just had to be perfect or I couldn't do anything. And that's a lie. So in closing here, I want to make sure you have the tools necessary to get this done. So I'm going to ask you to do that funeral experience. And from top to bottom, it starts out with this. Fast forward to your future or to your funeral. Think about the people closest to you. Imagine them coming to the podium and talking about who you were. And what positive things would you want them to share about you? What meaningful things? What legacy? That's the word I want to key in on. What legacy did you leave behind for the experience you created between you and them? I want you to write those words down. I want you to think about men in your life and women in your life that you admire. I said men and women earlier, only name men, but I have to put my mother in there because my mom was a single mom and she was dedicated to our family. And she worked her tail off. She had a lot of help with our family, but she worked her tail off to become a nurse and to provide for us. And she had a significant amount of grit and a significant amount of fortitude to get it done. Very proud of my mother. Admire her greatly. My grandmas, my aunts. So I want you to think about those people and what attributes do you admire about them? And I would ask you to write those down in the list of the things that the people that matter to you in your life said about you in that funeral exercise. Once you have them written down, I want you to come to present day and I want you to say, hey, dude, if you keep doing what you're doing, are those the things you're going to become? And by God, be honest with yourself. Because if you're not, you are wasting your time. And once you start to understand this is the man that you want to be, these are the things that resonate and connect with you. Now you start to understand who it is you want to be. And that is who you can become. And it takes time. It takes intention. It takes doing these things and living like this on purpose. It will be difficult, but it will be incredibly valuable. You will change the course of yours and your family's legacy on this earth. That's how impactful it is. I know that because I've lived that. And I'm very thankful for that. So share with me. Share with me the man that you want to be. You know the email address, quincy@mvsmpodcast.com. And I'll tell you this, final thoughts. I put some framework together. I put another set of values together. And it's the 5 R's. It used to be 4 R's, and this year the Lord put it on my heart to take it up a notch. So here's the 5 R's. Number 1 is you got to be reliable. You got to be reliable. Number 2, be resourceful. Number 3, be resilient. Number 4, be relentless. And number 5, be remarkable. Those are the values by which I live my life, especially in my professional career. But I tend to look at everybody as if they were a customer and I'm in service to them. So I encourage you, as you go along in this process, you will start to develop your personal value system. And that's what will help guide you in what you do. Final words, honey?
No, I think you've covered all of it, baby.
Okay. Well, that is it for this episode of Man vs. Marriage. She is Jeanne Moran. I'm Quincy Moran, a.k.a. the Q-Dog, a.k.a. the Q-Ticketed Dog. And this is Man vs. Marriage, the podcast.